Okay, this is a fun graphing exercise with a piecewise function. It is one that has been very popular for students to ask about, so I am happy to be able to help you with this today. And I want to point out that because if because this is coming from an online homework platform, when you're doing it inside of the assignment, it would be graphed with graphing tools. And this can be a little bit tricky, and especially if you end up making a mistake on any part of this. So there's 3 different pieces. If you were to, say, graph the first 2 pieces correctly and then make a mistake on the 3rd piece, it's kind of hard to correct without having to clear the whole thing. There is, I think, a way to do it, but it's not always the easiest. So I always recommend that students take some paper and graph it on paper first, and that will help a lot with the actual graphing of it inside of the assignment. So we're going to start with the first piece, and it says negative 2x minus 5 if x is less than or equal to negative 4. So what are we supposed to take from that? Well, don't forget that on the other side of the equal sign is this expression here, which is function notation. And we learned that function notation is an interchangeable way to say y. So if I say y equals, and then just take that first piece, negative 2x minus 5, then what I really have for that first piece is just that I'm going to graph a line. The other thing to notice is that it says for x less than or equal to negative 4. So let's look at, here's where x equals negative 4, and everywhere along this line, any point along that line off into forever in both directions, all the values on that line, all the points on that line would have an x-coordinate of negative 4. Now, all the points that have x-coordinates that are less than negative 4 would be to the left of it, right? So I'm looking to graph this line only in that region. Now, the easiest way for me has always been to just graph the whole line and then erase the part that I don't want to keep. So I'm going to start by graphing the line using the slope-intercept form, since it is already in slope-intercept form. So this is the slope-intercept form of a linear equation, y equals mx plus b, and the m is the number that's attached to x, or in front of x, and that is our slope. We also refer to this as rise over run, or the change in y over the change in x. So if I write negative 2 as a fraction by putting it over 1, then I could view this as a rise of negative 2, meaning go down 2 and over 1. But from where? That brings us to the other number here, which, if we remember y equals mx plus b, the b, the constant, is always the y-intercept. Now, a nicer way to say that might be the y-coordinate of the point where the line crosses the y-axis. And the y-axis, anywhere you go along the y-axis, the x value is going to be 0. So we can make the point 0, negative 5, and this can be the place that I start and then use this slope to get to another point. so I can graph my line by connecting those points with a straight line. So I'm going to go from that starting point, I'm going to go down 2 and over 1. And notice that I could also write a negative 2 as positive 2 divided by negative 1. Because as long as I'm dividing a negative, either a negative divided by a positive or a positive divided by a negative, the result is going to be negative. So you can give the negative to either the rise or the run, just not to both, because if we divide a negative divided by another negative, it would give us a positive result. So it's your choice. Whatever makes most sense is where you can think of the negative direction. So maybe I want to do some more points, but I don't want to go down 2 again and fall off the grid. Maybe I want to instead go up 2 and backwards to the left a run of 1. So I'm going to try that from my y-intercept. I'm going to go up 2 and backwards 1. And I can continue doing that just to give myself more points. This can help with graphing the line nice and straight. If you don't have a straight edge, it just helps make sure that you're graphing it accurately. So I'll go ahead and connect those points with a straight line. And also, I'm going to notice that there's equality here in my inequality symbol, which is telling me that I want to use this equation for the function all the way up until where x is actually equal to negative 4. So we're going to have a closed point right on the grid line where x equals negative 4, and then we're going to draw the line into that region where all the x values are going to be less than negative 4. I did my best to connect those, but I kind of missed that second point a little bit. So I'm going to do it again just to make it nicer, be as accurate as possible. Now, I did say you could graph the whole thing and then just erase the part that you don't want. And I'm just going to pretend that I already graphed the rest of that, and now I'm erasing the remainder that's in the region outside of where I want to be with this piece. Okay, now we'll go on to the next piece, which is here. I'm going to just view it like this. Okay, so y is equal to negative 4 when, if x is between negative 4 and positive 4. So this time we're looking at all the way from this first yellow line that we already drew to where x equals positive 4. All right, so I'm going to draw through that grid line just so we can see the section where we're going to graph this piece. Notice that the inequality symbol right here does not have equivalence in it, and that makes sense because we already had equivalence on the previous piece, and it wouldn't make sense to have it also on the next piece. It's like you have to, that would not, actually, if we did have equivalence there, this would no longer be a function because we would have we would have an x value, negative 4, assigned to more than one y value, because then we would have another point right down here at negative 4 when x is equal to negative 4. So that would be a problem. That would fail the vertical line test that we use to identify whether we have a function or not. Yeah, so it does not have equality in that first part right there, which makes sense. So if that green point wasn't already there, we would have an open circle. But that green point, we might put, well, actually, we do need to put an open circle anyways, just to show where we're starting the next piece, which is down here, where y is equal to negative 4. And then we're just drawing along the grid line where y is always equal to -4. Okay, so all these points, all the points on this line follow the rule that y is equal to -4. And I made sure to put a closed point right there where x is equal to 4 because of the equivalence in that second inequality. Right, now we can move on to the next piece, the third piece, the third and final piece. We'll use another color. And this time, y equals -x plus 4. Okay, and I'm going to write it in mx plus b form. So instead of writing -x, I'm going to write -1 over 1 times x plus 4. So then I have my slope of either -1 over +1 or +1 over -1. And I also have the y-intercept point 0, 4. So let's also notice that this piece is where x is greater than or equal, or sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to say or equal. I meant to say this is where x is strictly greater than 4. So looking at that yellow line where it goes through where x equals 4, I already have a closed circle on there from the previous piece. So again, it's making sense to me that we should not see the equivalence portion in this inequality sign here for this piece. Now, what does it mean? It means that anywhere in this space to the right of that second yellow line is where we want to draw the line that fits this rule, this equation, right? So we're going to start at the y-intercept of 4. Okay, so here's the y-intercept of 4. Now I'm going to go ahead and use that to help me graph the line, but then I'm going to come back and erase the portion that is not within this designation, the x value is greater than 4. Okay, so for now I'm just going to do it from here. I'm going to use my slope, and it looks to me like I could go up and over 1. I'm sorry, up and backwards 1 because it's a -1. So I can go up in the positive direction for the rise and backwards in the negative direction for the run. Or from that same point, I could have gone down in the negative direction for the rise and positive for the run. And notice that that's going to keep giving me more points if I keep doing that. All right. And I want to start with an open circle where x equals 4, and then draw the line from there. Or you could have drawn the whole line all together and then just taken out the part that doesn't fit into that space. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. Now we can take this picture over into the online homework and do it using the graphing tools there. So let's go here. And I need to readjust this so that it fits into my window here. I probably should have paused the recording till I could get this in place here. Oh, yes, I'm going to pause. All right, we're back in business. So I'm going to start with that far leftmost piece and take the ray tool. That's going to start us off at the point, what is this point? This point would be -4, 3. I'm going to go to -4 and then up 3. And I'm going to start there. And then my second point, I'm going to use the slope, which was -2, going up 2 and over 1. So I got my first piece done. Now I'm going to do this second piece here. Oh, you know what? I think I need a solid point right there. I hope it doesn't matter the order. We'll see. Let's do next this line segment right here in blue. So we're going to go from this point, which is -4 comma -4. So to x equals -4, then down to y equals -4. I'll start my line segment there. And then I'm going to go over to where I have an x value of 4 and a y value of -4. And then I'll put an open circle on the left end and a solid point on the right end. Now for the purple piece, again, I'm going to use my ray tool, and I'm going to go to where x equals 4, and I'm right on the x-axis for this one. And then I'm going to use my negative slope of -1 to get to another point, down 1 and over 1. And then I'm going to put an open circle on the left end. And let's see if this works. Yay! So that is why it is so important to graph it first and then use the tools, because I mean, if I had to change anything on here, I think it's kind of tricky because the tool thing, it just starts drawing again, and then it's like if you can just get it to select a certain way, I think you can get it to erase pieces, but I've always had trouble with that. So I just recommend, because I don't want to have to clear it all, you know, if I get a couple pieces done and then I make a mistake, say on the last piece, it would be a shame to have to start over, and that definitely leads to some frustration. So hopefully you'll use the paper first, and I hope this was helpful for you.